Hello, everybody. My name is Russ Burleson, and this is the start of Crave the Wave. So I assume that most of you have already seen the presentations that have been put out there, the live stream. But I was also going to go through those slides again and talk about Crave the Wave, some of the things that have changed, and some of the other things that'll be coming up. Feel free to please send any questions via the chat and raise your hand if you have any questions. So let's see if I can get this to work right. So if you notice here is the presentation for Crave the Wave for this year. And again, my name is Russ Burleson. You can reach me at geaux15@hotmail.com with any questions you may have. So please keep in mind, these are still using the draft rules. There are going to be some changes that will come out in the final rules. They'll be out that Tuesday after Labor Day. And then those will be the official rules for the season. So just a quick agenda. I'm going to go over who I am. I'm a content focus. We're going to talk about some of the resources available and some of the key elements in the topics and tasks. So my name is Russ Burleson. I live in Austin, Texas. That's a picture of myself and my wife, who also is a Science Olympiad volunteer. I had started out as an SO para, became then a coach for Magsig Middle School in Ohio. We placed 5th in nationals. And then also I'm a member of the National Physics Rules Committee, and I've been an event supervisor at pretty much every level of competition all over the country in physics, engineering, and earth science events. I was also the Maryland SO director, and then I've presented at this and other coaching clinics around the country. So when we talk about Crave the Wave, the key thing is that the participants need to be able to show that they understand the types of waves, how wave motion works, but very important, they also need to be able to handle hands-on activities, especially if you're having an in-person event. So let's talk about some of the resources that are available. So there's one of the things I did was I provided some very high-level online coaching videos for both coaches and students that are available at the national website. So you go to soinc.org, go to Division B, Crave the Wave pages. You're going to see videos for new coaches. You're going to see videos for actually students. I'm going to be adding in some new videos. Some of the new videos that I'm going to be adding in are we're going to add in a video specifically on the use of scientific notation. Okay. We're also going to be adding in some videos on the Doppler effect and on the application of Snell's law. You'll also find that sciali.org is a great resource, especially for the test exchange. You also have student forums. It's sort of like the internet version of Science Olympiad. Now, keep in mind, anything on the national website, like an FAQ or clarification, that carries the same weight as your rules. Anything on Sciali is basically someone's opinion. So if Russ Burleson says something at Sciali, that's Russ Burleson's opinion. If something is posted on the national website under an FAQ or clarification, then that's a rule. I also really like Wikipedia, especially for waves, because what you'll find is that generally speaking, it's at about the right level for middle school, and it gives a lot of different links. The kids are really used to using it. But the key thing that I always tell everybody is make sure that you always use the resources that work best for you. I would also recommend, looking at some of these other web resources like the Zonderland Physics Department, Physics 2000. There's some stuff here on the superposition of waves. There's some interactive sound waves and some other things. There's some really neat links here on the Doppler effects, spectroscopy, prisms, and refraction. And then there's a lot of stuff on standing waves as well. But let's talk about Crave the Wave. It's pretty much the same event as last year. We've just sort of moved a couple of things around. So it's a team of 2, no eye protection required. Wait a second, I see that we've got a question. Yes, we're going to go through some examples and resources for the hands-on component, Emmy. Thank you for asking that. Part 2 is going to be 25 to 50% of the score, and high score wins. And then ties are broken using pre-selected questions. Now, honestly, when I'm doing a test and I have a 75 question test, because it's a pretty big event, I have 75 levels of tiebreaker, and I never have a tie. Okay. That's one of the nice things about doing those online tests. When you're hand grading them, you're going to have a lot fewer. But the things you're going to cover are going to be general wave characteristics, wave types, wave phenomenon, electromagnetic waves, spectroscopy. Now, the thing that you should notice that's different is that refraction and Doppler effect problems are only going to be at the state and national level. So what that means is I can ask you questions about refraction, I can ask you questions about the Doppler effect, but only about the theory all the way through regionals. And at state and nationals, I can actually have you do those problems. Now, what did get pushed down to the regional level was earthquake and seismic waves, okay? And there's just generally, the math is less involved. And so now that's available at all levels. And of course, boundary effects remain only at nationals. Okay. So let's talk about topics and tasks. So, for general wave characteristics, I'm going to ask questions about wavelength, amplitude, frequency, and period. For wave types, I'm going to talk about transverse, longitudinal, surface, torsional waves. Wave phenomena, I want them to really understand the difference between reflection, refraction, and diffraction. Keep in mind, it's theory only for refraction. Doppler, it's going to be theory only, okay? Media impact. And then you talk about the electromagnetic spectrum. I could ask questions about sound, radio, microwave, visible light, ultraviolet, all the way through gamma waves. And then under spectroscopy, I might talk about the primary colors of lights and pigments, and the use of colored filters, absorption and emission spectra. These are all the types of questions that I might be asking questions about. And then for earthquake and seismic waves, I'm going to expect them to understand the difference between a pressure curve and a shear curve, okay? And be able to use those, the distances and between the P and the S, impacting some places to be able to estimate distance. They're going to need to understand what love and surface waves are. So, again, here are some of the examples that I could use. Label the parts of a wave, determine the frequency and wavelength and period of a given wave. And for a hands-on task, I may show them a video. Okay, for a hands-on task, they may actually make measurements. Okay, determine the angles of incident or reflection. So make sure they understand the law of reflection. Listen to a stationary moving sound to determine if it's coming closer or going away from you. That's a very common one. Determine how to use various filters. Okay, for creating a particular light color, or being able to see light off of a particular colored piece of paper with maybe some colored ink on it. Given pictures, determine the type of light used to take those pictures. And then, of course, now you'll be able to be given S&P curves to determine the distance and location of the epicenter of an earthquake. Okay, at the state level, you could have all those topics Now we add in refraction theory and calculation. So it's not just theory anymore, and Doppler effect theory and calculations. And those calculations are much more involved. And in fact, for refraction, you're going to actually, they'll need to know how to use the sign button on their calculator. And they'll even need to know how to do it, an inverse or an arc sine function. Okay. So, like, to give you an idea of what some of those tasks might look like is I might ask them to apply Snell's law for two and multimedia interfaces. Okay. Um, a hands-on activity might be bringing in like a fishbowl with like a rod in it, and then looking at the bending of the rod and measuring the bending of the rod, and then determining what the index of refraction is of the water. Okay, Doppler effect. Now I may actually have them do the calculations. So the train's now coming at me at 50 meters a second. Okay, what's the impact on the sound of the train horn? Okay, I might do blue and red shift problems for like galaxies either going away or coming towards us, or spacecraft or satellites. And what's the impact on the frequency? Or I know what the impact is on the frequency, try to figure out the relative velocities. Now, when we get to national levels, it's going to be all the same topics, except now we've added in breaking ocean waves, including tsunamis. And so we'll be talking about the different types of breaking ocean waves and the mechanisms for each. So one of the things, and this was actually on the national test last year, gave them pictures of the different types of waves. And they had to not only be able to identify what the different types of breaking ocean waves were, what were the mechanisms used within each ocean wave for the breaking. So some of the general coaching tips that I generally like to share are: keep in mind that winners prepare. No one was born knowing this material. Okay, so teams that practice more tend to do better. Okay, also, there's nothing more valuable than the coach's time. So please make sure that you have your students, as much as possible, do all their studying and homework before practice. So they can use practice for asking questions. You can do it for doing evaluation tests. You grab a test off of Scioli, and that's 20 minutes of your exam, is you give them 20 minutes to do a 50-minute test. Okay. And again, that's going to help you with your evaluation of your students and figure out what the areas where they need to improve, and also where they need to improve in on their binder. Have them plan on doing the studying outside of practice. Okay. Winners work together. I've had teams where one kid was really, really good with calculations, and the other kid was really, really good with like conceptual stuff or historical stuff, if you had historical stuff. So find good ones that match well together and have them practice together and use their binders together. Keep in mind that event supervisors are volunteers. So they've given up their time just like you have. And some are going to be more experienced. Some are going to know the rules better than others. Some are just going to be better than others. Okay. Make sure that both you and your students are always respectful and work with them. Really harp on your students to listen to the instructions and read the test before you ask the questions. I kid you not, on the online exams, because those are super popular the last couple of years. I get so many questions where it's the same question, where all they had to do was read the question, and especially around significant digits. Okay. If they would read it, it would save them a lot of time. Also, remember, different event supervisors are going to ask the same questions differently. Like, I'm an engineer, so I tend to ask the question as an engineer would. Others will ask that question very similarly to a science teacher or a physics teacher. You can sometimes even tell the difference just by looking at the way they ask the question. So that's why I like to grab a lot of practice quizzes from all sorts of different sources, so that they're used to seeing the different ways you can ask all these questions. One of the things I always like to go over with my students is how to argue an illegal question. Always tell them to reread the question to ensure it's illegal. And keep in mind, the event supervisor can have the old rules, but double check your rules. Make sure you actually have the right rules. Ask in a respectful tone how to implement the question within the rules and reference a specific rule that you're concerned about. But most importantly, do not stop working on the test. You ask the question, and if the event supervisor says, go ahead and answer it, make your best guess and move on. I've actually had a team that spent like 10, 20 minutes arguing an illegal question. I think I finally threw the question out, but they lost 10 to 20 minutes. And you just don't want to waste that time. You've only got 50 minutes for the exam. One of the other things is moderation in all things. This was an actual binder. This was a 2-foot thick binder used for It's About Time, and the team did horrible because they could never find anything. I usually like about a 2.5-inch binder as a maximum size. And I like to do things in my binder, like make sure that when I'm doing that binder, I put in as much stuff as I can. So like I will go to images.google for electromagnetic spectrum, and I'll do the top 20 hits. And the reason why is event supervisors, they're on a time schedule. So they're going to probably not use the top number 1 hit on images.google, but they're probably going to use like number 5 or 6. And they're going to change it up. And if you've got all of them, then you're set. And again, that only takes like a few pages in your binder to do. Make sure you use your free tools. Go to as many tournaments as you can, or set up like little scrimmages amongst your team and or amongst local schools. Okay. Just always be looking for getting new folks, because again, as coaches, your time is the most important thing. And remember, SO mission: create an interest and passion for science, improve STEM, education, and workforce skills, and then recognize and celebrate these achievements. And so the rest of this, I was told not to cover it, is just general wave theory. And this is a lot of the stuff that you will see from my from the presentations that I do online. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. Coach Hogan, by practical portions, you mean calculations. If an event supervisor doesn't have time to create hands-on, is it enough to use photos that are part of a paper test? Yes. A lot of times they will use pictures, okay? Or they will use a video or like a GIF or something like that. So the thing that I would recommend is to be able to have them able to handle both. Do we need stations? You don't need stations. I have seen it done with stations, especially like if they've got a thing where they've got like a flashlight and you put a red filter on the light, you look at something, and then you put a green filter on the light. I've seen them do stuff like that. And then you try to figure out what color is the actual object inside the box. But I've also seen it where they just said, and they show you a picture, here's what the object looks like under red light, here's what the object looks like under a green light, and do it that way. Very good question, Coach Hogan. And Emmy, I hope I did answer your question about examples and resources. One of the other things that I'm working on right now, and I'm only about halfway through it, is I'm creating a homework generator that will also be on the national website. And what that'll do is it'll create several sample problems. So like right now, it creates a whole bunch of, if you've got velocity, if you've got wavelength, if you've got period, if you've got 2 of the 3 parts of the wave equation, solve for the third. Okay. I'm also putting in, tab for like changes the speed of sound with relation to temperature or to other things. And then Coach Hogan, I'd love to make stations for invitationals. Always a question of time and resources. Just making sure I'm within the scope of the rules. Coach Hogan, you're absolutely with. When you are the event supervisor, try to think of what you have the resources to do, what you have the time to do, but more importantly, what you really enjoy. I will tell you that there are some people that are just naturals at doing hands-on activities, and there's others that it's one of the things we struggle with. And so that's one of the reasons why I offered up myself, or excuse me, my email. Feel free to reach out to me if you've ever got questions throughout the rest of the year. We're going to be doing some like Thursday night open sessions where we'll answer any questions for any of the physics events. I agree that this event, okay, Emmy came out with, thank you for all the extra resources. I appreciate it. Thank you. I think this event was most difficult at middle school level to tackle. That is correct. There's a lot of material. It actually covers a lot of the same material that you see in Sounds of Music and Wi-Fi. Where will we find the information for Thursday sessions? Those will be sent out from the national office. I'm working with John right now to get that all set up. Not quite as difficult as Circuit Lab. That's true. I agree it's a hard event for both competitors and event supervisors. The good news is if these kids master wave, just the conceptual wave theory, it's going to help them in so many other areas of physics and engineering as they go forward and in other events. And John Laird just announced to everybody that we're going to announce that in the monthly newsletters. We're trying to work things out. We're going to try to set it up like this, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to accidentally have any images of the students or whatever appear or be shared. And we need to make sure that we're protecting everybody's identity. Any other questions? I hope this was helpful. I hope the materials are helpful, and please let me know if you find errors, because we'll want to get those fixed up. This is a really good one for your conceptual kids, because every kid's seen a wave, every kid's heard sound, every kid sort of likes doing the light things. The math can be a little tricky, especially when you get to state and nationals, but just really focus on the regional at the beginning. If they understand that velocity equals frequency times wavelength, and they understand what those three things are, that's 25% of every test at a minimum, if not 50%. The other stuff is, you can just keep adding on top of that.
Hey, Russ, can I put in a plug for another thing that these coaches may be interested in?
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead, John.
So if you're not familiar, we launched the MySO program about 2 years ago. And the idea behind it is we take kind of an event each month and provide some resources for it. And this year we're going to be starting the program in September with it's Wave Month. So there will be stuff out there for Crave the Wave, It's About Time, Wi-Fi Lab, and Sounds of Music. So there'll be a lesson plan, there'll be lecture slides, a bunch of hands-on activities, and where there'll be a video for the kids. And last but not least, at the end of the month, there'll be an online quiz that they'll have access to, and it's entirely free. So I would encourage you to take a look for that. Again, you can find it on the national website.
Outstanding. By the way, has anyone had any problems getting to the national website? The question was about P and S wave calculations as a state level task. It's now a regional level test. That is correct. We did that because when we looked at it, that was a lot easier problem than a lot of the refraction and the Doppler effect problems. We sort of swapped them. That was the real reason why we did that. Okay, with that, I will stop my share. And John, I guess I turn it over to you. I'm not sure what I do next.
Yeah, if there are no more questions and anything, no one else needs anything, we're gonna go ahead. We'll go ahead and end the session a little bit early, let everyone get a bit of a break. And we will pick up again at 11:45 Central with anatomy and physiology, experimental design, and roller coaster. We'll all be going at the end of the day. All right.
Sounds great. Well, thank you, everyone, and good luck this year to everybody.